the truth is, as our culture goes further and further away from the Bible, the more and more our culture and society deserts the Bible, goes away from the Word of God, what we're seeing is a very polarized view of what the role of men and women, husbands and wives, are supposed to look like. We're seeing very different extremes, both evil, both wrong, both demonic. We're seeing extremes in culture when it comes to what does it look like to be a biblical wife, biblical husband. We're seeing that rise in culture. When it comes to the men, we're seeing the kind of extremes where on one hand, we have, the effeminate, passive, Ahab kind of men, men in dresses, men that look all feminine. They're not gay, but they look gay, they dress gay, and it's kind of like the effeminate spirit, they're kind of, their mantra is, happy wife, happy life, happy Jezebel, happy life, happy Eve, happy life. I'm not a leader, I'm not here to be the priest of my home, I'm just here to make sure my wife is happy. I don't ever want to correct her, I don't want to lead the house, I'm just going to let her do her own thing. So on one side, we've got the passive extreme men, but then on the other side, there's the other opposite extreme rising up. You have the alpha male Andrew Tates of the world that rise up, and the Nick Fuentes, and these people, they demean women and they look down upon women. And Andrew Tate, if you don't know who he is, on X recently, he put out a tweet where he was like, if your woman complains when you cheat on her, she doesn't really respect you. And if you never cheat on her, then she's the man in the relationship and you're the woman. This is kind of the opposing extreme that's rising up to the passive men. It's either Christless men or cruel men. You're seeing two extremes in culture, and we see extremes when it comes to the women as well. There's always, whenever there's an extreme that rises up in culture, there's always a counter extreme. So, when it comes to the women, we of course have our feminists, we have our women that are like, the future is female. I'm like, really? The future is female? Because without men, there will be no future, because it takes men and women to have a future, because it takes two to tango, so we need men and women. But no, we don't need men. Men are the problem. Men are toxic. We don't need men. We got Miley Cyrus. I can buy myself flowers. I can do my own. I can go on a date by myself. I don't need a man. I can take myself out dancing. And it's a hyper independent spirit of this world would just be a better place if men were not in it. We don't need men. But then, as always, when there is an extreme that rises up, there's always a counter extreme. And so now you've got this kind of hype in culture all over social media right now of the trad wife rising up in culture. You have not stay-at-home mothers, you have stay-at-home wives. Stay-at-home wives that believe that women should never make money, they should never contribute financially to the home. That's the man's job. She should just stay home. I'm not sure what a stay-at-home wife does all day. Like, she must do her makeup for 3 hours. I mean, the house must be very clean. Like, I'm not sure what she's doing. She doesn't have children to look after, to raise. So you got, the stay-at-home wives, and they're really trying to replicate like the 1950s where the ladies believed that only the men could be the breadwinner. Women should never make money. Women shouldn't try to use their brains. Like, sit down, honey, before you hurt yourself. Don't use your brain. Don't have any intellect. Don't have any intelligence. Don't help out your husband. Just, put on a flowy floral dress. Sit home, rest your feet. The job of the man is to go out, provide. You just put your feet up and look pretty for him when he gets home. So you kind of had the trad wife rising up. But this is a problem. The devil is usually in extremes. This is the idea. It's that wherever you see extremes, the devil is usually at work. C.S. Lewis, he actually said it like this. He said, the devil always puts errors out into culture. He puts errors into the world in pairs of opposites. He relies on your extra dislike of the one error to draw you gradually into the opposite one. But don't be fooled. We have to keep our eyes on the goal and go straight through between both errors. So in culture, there is always what we call the pendulum theory, where culture is always swinging from one extreme to the next. We're swinging from one extreme, one side of the coin that's demonic, to another side of the coin that is demonic. We keep swinging. It was like that in Christianity, where for a period we had the very legalistic, condemning kind of preachers that never, ever spoke about the love of God. And then we swung to lawless Christianity, where we abuse the grace of God, and I'll never even use the word sin. Why? Because we swing and swing and swing. We went from authoritarian parenting, where you never tell your child you love them. Then we swung as a culture to gentle parenting. Why? The pendulum theory. We keep on swinging from extreme to extreme. And how do we solve this issue in culture? There has to be some sort of anchor that stops the pendulum from swinging, that does not move with the hypes and the trends and the fads and whatever society is going with. There has to be an anchor, and that God. The Bible is our anchor. It is our guide. It is the one that gives us clarity in a world of confusion, in a world of passive men and Andrew Tate's. This is our guide. This is what a biblical man looks like. In a world of tradwives and feminists, this is our guide that tells you this is what a woman of God looks like. We need an anchor for our souls. This earth will fade away. Trends come and go, but his word shall remain. His word remains. His word never fails. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. God's idea for marriage has never changed. Culture keeps on changing its idea. God's idea has never changed. God's definition of a biblical woman and a biblical wife has never changed. Because he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So we need an anchor for our souls. And what I'm seeing in culture when it comes to the women, as I said, is that we have had this since the 60s. We've had the feminist movement where a bunch of women rose up that were domineering and aggressive and I don't submit to no man and I'm Miss Independent. We don't need men. So now what we're seeing, the devil is going to try to lure you into the opposite extreme and the opposite sin. He's either going to try to get you to be a Jezebel feminist or he will lure you into extreme passive laziness. And I see this happening in culture today. Well, I don't want to have any ambition like those crazy feminists, so how about I just be this, passive woman that has absolutely no drive, and I don't need to work hard. I should just let the men do that, and I'll just look pretty at home. See, the devil is luring you, women, into the opposite extreme. You're either going to be aggressively ambitious or he's going to try to convince you to be lazy, to be incompetent, to not work hard, to not strategize, to not ever want to steward your finances in your house with your husband. And he'll do it and brand it all under the title of humility. Oh, what a humble, meek woman you are. He'll call your incapability and your incompetence. He'll say, oh, that's just you being a humble, gentle, quiet spirit. But in order for us to not be deceived by the extremes of culture, we need to go back to what the Word of God says.